Hey, good morning. Welcome to Viking Preparedness. I am Pastor Joe Fox. Let's talk about wars and rumors of wars. So, last night, lots of reports coming in. Syria was being missiled from, and the reports I read were crazy. Um, I visit a few different sites and news sites, and my wife's on Twitter. And I swear people make stuff up to try and look cool, to try and look like they know what they're doing, you know? Um, Initial reports came in that Syria was being hit by missiles. Then it came in reliable sources report that U.S. ships in the Mediterranean are firing cruise missiles. All right, when someone writes that, and then that's all they write, what are their reliable sources? See, I think they made it up. But if they had some sources, their sources ought to now be downgraded to like F5, right? They don't do anything. They're no good. And then, we heard this, we heard that, we heard, oh my, World War III has started. Everybody panic, run around with your hair on fire. Some people didn't. First reports are almost always wrong. As it turned out, and this is probably true, Israel struck um, Syria, and I'll get into why and all that here in a second. Shortly before that, hours before that, Trump tweeted something to the effect of this Syrian gas attack is unacceptable and people who support Syria are going to pay a heavy price or something like that. And then this attack happened. So people, I think, make a logical assumption that it's the U.S. conducting the attack. But then the U.S. Pentagon says, after the attack commenced, we're not hitting anybody. We don't lie about stuff like that. If the Pentagon says we're not hitting anybody, we're not hitting anybody. So let's kind of break this whole nut apart. um, the gas attack. We, the U.S., powers that be, are saying that Assad used chemical weapons, some kind of gas, on his own people, but rebels, something like 30 miles east of Damascus. Recently, the other day. And they killed a dozen and injured hundreds, something like that. And this is horrible and unacceptable in this modern world to use chemical warfare like that. And by God, something needs to be done. And the world gets outraged. Dun, 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 dun. Kind of similar, back up about a month or so, um, when Britain accused Russia of putting some kind of nerve agent, I think, on two former spies, people who were spying on Russia who are now living in, or one guy who was spying on Russia who now lived in Britain, and his daughter also got it, and they almost died, and they were in the hospital, man, and now they're going to put him in protective custody. So you'll never see him again. So the press will never have access to them again. The Russians are saying we didn't do it. Pretty strongly saying we didn't do it. I tend to believe them. Could they have done it? Sure. I think they're smarter than that, though. I think if they were going to kill somebody, they'd do it better. I mean, when you kill somebody with nerve agent, when you use nerve agent, somebody can scrape pieces of that nerve agent up, molecularly track it, and figure out, yes, this nerve agent came from Russia, which evidently, supposedly, it did. They won't let the Russians see any of the evidence. Trump was starting to make nice again with Russia, right? And then this thing comes out, and so then Trump does all the sanctions on Russia because of this poison nerve agent attack in London. Um, and then other people do other things, and look at Russia, the bad guys. Man, I gotta believe Russia's smarter than that. Just stab them to death. You know, hire some street urchin to stab the people to death. Oh, it's random violence. Who knew? Not a nerve agent that goes directly back to your country, right? I mean, come on. If you were going to kill somebody, would you kill somebody with a weapon that only you had and that people knew you had? So that people could tell, well, this person was killed with this, and Bob's the only one in the world that has that. No, you wouldn't do that. Come on. You think the Russians are stupid? I don't think they're stupid. So that thing goes on. And again, they're not presenting their evidence to Russia to look at, you know, like defense or anything like that. It's like, yeah, no, we know you did it. Okay. They might not even have been injured. You ever think about that? That whole thing could be made up. You'll never know. Now, come the Trump says on a tweet, we're pulling out of Syria. It's time for the neighbors to take care of that. If y'all care about it, you take care of it. I agree with that sentiment. If they care about Syria, let them take care of it. What the heck are we fighting in Syria for, right? And very shortly thereafter, Syria does a gas attack on their own people. Why would Assad do that? I mean, they're 30 miles from Damascus, this village, supposedly. Why would he, when he's winning, when the U.S. says we're leaving, which is the biggest thorn in his side there, right? I mean, we kind of killed ISIS off for the most part, who was a thorn in his side. So we went in there and took care of that for him. And now we say we're leaving. Why would he then poke us like that and make the whole world mad? He wouldn't. If he wanted to kill those rebels, and I understand leaders wanting to kill rebels, I get that. If he wanted to kill rebels, he could have just lined up artillery and just shelled that city into oblivion. Why would he use poison gas and only kill a dozen people? You know what I mean? The penalty, the world getting upset about using poison gas is huge compared to you killed 12 people. Dude, I could kill 12 people with 2 snipers pretty quickly. I mean, you know what I mean? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't pass the sniff test. So, I think that's a false flag. An action attributed to somebody who didn't do it. And it might not even be an action. There might not even be chemical warfare being used there either. Just make the crap up. And so everyone naturally assumed that because Trump tweeted in response to this chemical warfare attack, you know, blah, 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 that was what it was about. It wasn't even about that. The attack on the airfield outside of Homs. That attack was by Israel because Iran, who's big allies, big supporter of Syria, Iran supports Hamas. And you know Hamas is doing their little days of rage, right of return, something they're calling it. I told you it was going to fizzle. It's fizzling. And they're trying to, you know, sneak fighters in through the protest. We talked about that earlier. And Iran supports Hamas and the military wing and all that, and they do that by bringing supplies and trainers and stuff in, and they were evidently bringing them to this airport in Homs, where there was a whole pile of this stuff. And so Israel found out about it, and they're like, yeah, we're going to go blow that stuff up, or it's going to end up being used on us. And so they flew evidently 2 F-15s over Lebanon, and then they launched a missile attack from Lebanon into Syria. Why? Because Lebanon's not in control of their airspace. They're not in control of their country. Israel can fly over Lebanon at will. Syria probably does have air defense systems set up to protect the air above Syria. I'm sure some of that also goes over and overlaps into Lebanon. But there's that you don't want to shoot down something over Lebanon if you don't know what it is. And by the time they see it and they launch and they drive away, fly away, you know, it's too late. And so they launched a bunch of missiles. Supposedly the Syrians shot down some of them. They supposedly killed some Syrians. Not a huge big deal, actually, from what we're reading. And then landed. Okay, so that had nothing to do with the gas. It had everything to do with Hezbollah and Iran. But Syria is aligned with Iran. Iran hates Israel. Russia just sat down, Putin just sat down with the head guy of Iran and Turkey and had a little talk, little chit-chat. Who knows where that went? Iran will probably try to respond somehow. Will that draw anybody else in? Don't know. Right now I'm thinking probably not. So I think that's just, that little incident may be over. Here's another thing. I guess the National Security Council just met this morning. Trump's advisors on national security. And I read some comments, Trump wasn't in attendance at the meeting and people were trying to read all kinds of stuff into that. People. He has really smart advisors. Maybe they want to meet and discuss things and figure out what they want to present to the boss first, right? And then he'll sit down. He doesn't need to waste his time listening to everybody go back and forth. You guys bring me an answer on what's going on here. So nothing to the fact that he wasn't there. Big deal. Chickens! I'm talking here. But they came up with something. And something's going to happen. Mattis just said recently, in the last hours, that military action is not off the table. Of course it's not off the table. This administration will tell you that all the time. But the fact that he said it, we're probably going to do something about that gas attack. Why do we care? 12 people in Syria were supposedly killed by Assad regime. 12 people. How many people were killed in Chicago last night by our own people, murdered? Detroit, East St. Louis, West Memphis. What other bad cities do we have? DC, probably. More than a dozen. You don't even read about that. Something else you're not reading about anymore? That woman who shot up YouTube. She doesn't fit their paradigm, man. She's a female. She's a vegan. She's a Muslim. Oh, no, they're not the bad people. Old white dudes sitting in the Ozarks, they're the bad guys who don't shoot anybody. Yeah, you're not going to hear any more about that. So I expect to see some action from the U.S., but check it. We're poking that bear again. We just laid a whole bunch of sanctions on them. We're embarrassing them. We're humiliating them in political circles. We kick their people out of our embassies. We kick 60 out. Why? That's dumb. Now they're going to send new ones in. We're going to figure out who's who. So we kicked 60 people out, and now we're putting sanctions on Putin's friends. We're putting sanctions on China. We're getting ready to put more tariffs and punishment on China. They're not happy. Russia's not happy. You know why? Because we need a war. Our economy is getting ready to just go boom, and nothing brings up the economy like good old-fashioned war. Who said war's a racket? Submarine guy, I think. War's coming. What kind of war? World War III? I don't know. It could be. I mean, whenever you get Russia, the U.S., and China fussing, right now it's all kind of through proxy, but that could change from proxy to real in the next couple hours. Be a good time to figure out what time's what. Like from the Ozarks, Syria is 8 hours ahead. And so as I film this, it is almost 11. It's starting to get dark in Syria. Things could be happening. What are you going to do? I'll tell you what you shouldn't do. Don't pass along crap. If you don't know, don't act like you do. Don't say, well, I saw another post today. I called them out on it too. Somebody said, rumors have it that there's going to be 1, possibly 2 EMP strikes on the U.S. That is utter crap. That is crap. Where do you think this information would come from? You think the Russians or the Iranians or the North Koreans or the Chinese, whoever was going to do this EMP strike on the U.S., a strike which would allow us to retaliate with real nukes, right? Do you think they'd let that leak out so that then rumors could start? Give me a break. Use some common sense, quit saying stuff that, and I love these people who try to use vernacular that they're totally not ready. They don't have a clue, but they try to sound cool. You know, they're these just fat old civilians sitting in a chair somewhere. Well, we got 3 birds aloft and POTUS is blah, blah, blah. Really? Why don't you just say what you mean? And why don't you just say what if instead of, I have it on good authority. I have an A1 source that this is happening. No, you don't. No, you don't. Because your A1 source wouldn't tell you if you were going to put it all over the internet. It just adds to the confusion, which I guess, you know, most of y'all aren't like that. So here's the thing. Don't get all in a panic when you first hear news reports. You can start taking steady action. You should already be pretty much prepared for anything that's going to come. But don't get all in a panic. First reports are normally wrong. Things usually aren't as bad as they used to be. I mean, as they seem to be when you first hear about it. All right, so that's kind of what's going on there from my take. What am I doing differently today? Nothing. I rebuilt. I added to. I almost finished my closet in this house, and so I had to like break some eggs to scramble some eggs. I had to pull everything out of the closet, put up new wood, painted it. It dried last night. I got the shelves back up, and I'm putting the clothes back up in there. And then I'm going to try and get up there and start working on the guest cabin today, because the weather is lovely. Blue skies, no clouds. All right, y'all stay frosty. Keep your nose to the wind. See what's going on. Don't panic. Just take constant forward motion. I appreciate y'all. I'll see you out there.